welcome everyone to the Emmaus Borough Council Chambers. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I'd like to throw out another welcome to our County Executive, Phil Armstrong. Thank you for coming. I know you like to make your rounds, and we appreciate that. At this time, we'll have personal appeals, part one. If anyone has a personal appeal, approach the podium. You have 5 minutes, and please sign in. Hearing none. Does anybody have a community minute to bring forward?
Sure. I will just report that the farmers market opened on yesterday for the 15th year. Hard to believe it's been 15 years. They have great amount of local produce and food, meats, you name it is there, plants. And again, everything is local farmed. So, if you get a chance, stop out. It's open on every Sunday from 10 a.m. to, I believe it's 1 p.m. 2 p.m. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I know Mr. Barrett was there, Ms. Mayor was there, and Jeff. So thank you all for joining for the ribbon cutting as well. Progress.
Thank you. I drove by after church, and there was a bustling crowd there, and I think that independent film festival, there were some events going on with that yet, and I saw some stands and book signings and whatnot. So combined, it was a really nice event. Looked like a good crowd. So special presentations, we have none. Reading of the minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the April 16th council meeting minutes? Councilman Barrett, seconded by Councilman Schubsta. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 7 ayes. We have no decisions on bids. Communications, we have 2 listed here. We have a Frank Kane, Director of Lehigh County Community and Economic Development. It's a rather lengthy 2-page letter with some options for us with regards to our grant, and I'll refer that to General Administration.
I don't even think that we need to do that. Bottom line is, this is something that we've been a part of for years, and unless we have a reason to get out of it, we don't have to take any action.
Okay.
My advice to you is, we have no reason to get out of it.
So just stay the course.
So just stay the course. So I'm not even sure that we need to
Okay.
do anything.
Second letter was from Martin Androvic with the Memorial Day Parade ceremony. He's the coordinator, and he's asking for use of the triangle, and that will be just regular handled by staff, correct? Or do we actually need to approve that?
How close are we?
That's staff.
Too close, right?
Yeah,
All right.
that's staff.
And then I think we got a couple letters here. Do you want me to leave this one for you to report during your
No,
committee?
that's fine. I talked about it last week, but,
So the Earth Day cleanup, I guess we got final tallies here.
yep.
122 people were there.
Yeah, it
And
was
they
the
have the
wrong-
locations that were picked up. Total amount of 23,205 pounds of recyclables were dropped off.
That's for sure.
That's 9,500 more than last year. 65 pounds of that was alkaline batteries, 35 pounds rechargeable batteries.
And then the shredding event. Yep.
There's 54 30-gallon bags of trash collected, 16 30-gallon bags of recyclables. And there's some other stats here, but along with the sponsors. And it's always a great event. It's well attended. Often the same people come out every year. And so thank you for that. The totals there. And then we received a letter from Stephanie Gardner. She is the person who organized the Independent Film Festival that we had this weekend. I guess it's just a thank you, right? I didn't have time to read it. It was on our desk tonight, so looks like it was just a thank you. So,
Nice to.
yeah. All right. Anybody else have any communications that they received? they want to bring up? All right. Borough Engineers Report, we have none. Solicitors Report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have good news tonight. We have resolved the legal matter that was set for the executive session. So none is necessary, and it was resolved favorably to in everything that the borough had requested.
Great.
And that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. That leads us to unfinished business part 1. We have second reading of ordinance 1173, an ordinance amending chapter 15, subsection 405 of the codified ordinances establishing regulations of portable storage containers. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve ordinance 1173? Councilman Barrett, seconded by Councilman Schubsta. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Councilwoman McManaman?
Aye.
Councilman Schubsta? Aye. Councilman Anders?
Aye.
Councilman Barrett?
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne?
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Aye.
Councilman Ladenburg? Aye. Ordinance 1174 is second reading also. An ordinance of the Borough of Emmaus, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 18, Part 3 of the Code of the Borough of Emmaus to adopt ordinance 15346 of the City of Allentown, dated February 1st, 2017, relating to sewage and industrial waste discharges into the borough-owned, publicly owned treatment works, subject to certain revisions, additions, and exceptions. First reading was April 2nd, and like I said, this is second reading. So somebody like to make a motion to pass ordinance 1174? Councilman Schubsta, seconded by Councilwoman Baumgartner. Questions or discussion? Roll call vote. Councilwoman McManaman?
Aye.
Councilman Schubsta?
Aye.
Councilman Anders?
Aye.
Councilman Barrett?
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne?
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Aye.
Councilman Ladenburg? Aye. That's 7 ayes.
Who made the motion?
Schubsta made the motion and seconded by Baumgartner. Going too fast for you?
I'm good.
Sorry.
I know, you want to go. No, I'm just.
Review the tape, right?
Also, we have ordinance 1175, second reading. First reading was on April 16th. Ordinance 1175, an ordinance of the Borough of Emmaus, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 15, subsection 602.2.a of the Emmaus Borough Code, removing a residential handicap parking sign on a public street located in front of 733 Walnut Street within the Borough of Emmaus. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve ordinance 1175? Councilman Dufresne, seconded by Councilman Anders. Questions or discussion? Roll call vote. Councilwoman McManaman?
Aye.
Councilman Schubsta?
Aye.
Councilman Anders?
Aye.
Councilman Barrett?
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne?
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Aye.
Councilman Ladenburg? Aye. There are 7 ayes. Under new business, we have ordinance 1176 for first reading. An ordinance of the Borough of Emmaus, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, amending the Code of Ordinances, amending Part 3 of Chapter 1, adding Section G, creating a Community Garden Commission. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve ordinance 1176? Councilwoman McManaman, second by Councilman Schubsta. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Councilwoman McManaman?
Aye.
Councilman Schubsta?
Aye.
Councilman Anders?
Aye.
Councilman Barrett?
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne?
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Aye.
Councilman Ladenburg? Aye. There are 7 ayes. Second reading will be in a month?
In a month.
Second
So
meeting?
it'll be June
18th.
18th.
All right. Unfinished business part 2, ordinance 1172. Second reading will be June 18th. Does anybody have anything to bring forward, items not on the agenda? Hearing none, Mayor's report.
Thank you.
Mayor is a little under the
Bear
weather
with
with her
me this
voice, so
evening.
she's going to be speaking softly.
Proclamation 2018-432, Police Week. Whereas law enforcement officers play an important role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms granted by the Constitution and protecting the lives and property of our citizens, and whereas these officers, through constant application of new procedures and techniques, are becoming more efficient in their enforcement of our laws, and whereas it's important that people realize the problems, duties, and the responsibilities of the police department and the necessity for cooperating with them in maintaining law and order, and whereas it is proper for the citizens to express gratitude for the dedicated service of our courageous deeds of law enforcement officers and in the contributions that they have made to the security and well-being of all people, and whereas on October 1st, 1962, by a joint resolution, Congress requested the President designate May 15th of each year as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the calendar week during which May 15th occurs as Police Week. Now, therefore, I, Leanne Gilbert, Mayor of the Borough of Emmaus, Pennsylvania, proclaim that the week of May 13th through May 19th, 2018 be known as Emmaus Police Department Week, and I urge all residents and friends of Emmaus to join in this observance. Done this 7th day of May, 2018, in the Borough of Emmaus, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. So when you see an officer, shake their hand and thank them for their services. I'll report progress.
Thank you, and I see you are doing a quarterly report, and I
Yes.
thank you for that. It's very nice to see the various things going on, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Committee reports, Public Works Committee, Chairman Anders.
We have nothing for official action. We meet the 14th at 3:30 p.m.
Thank you, Chairman Anders. Health, Sanitation, and Codes Committee, Chairman Schubsta.
Nothing for official action. We took care of all three ordinances on the second reading. In our committee notes, you could see that we're working on the refuse contract specs right now. So we should have those at the next meeting, right? At least a
Well,
pretty
your
tight draft.
draft before we send it to
Who do we send it to? Who's that guy? Oh, yeah.
the lawyer.
Yeah, so yeah, we should have a pretty tight draft at our next meeting, and I think that's the. When does that go out? When does the
So
When
I
are we
think the
shooting for?
bid due dates were August 1st.
August? Okay,
With
that's what it
council
was.
approval for the meeting in August. I think we were putting them out to bid sometime in early July with the mandatory meeting, like July 18th.
Yep.
The holidays.
Yeah, somewhere around there with the kickoff.
So yeah, so it gives us enough time that we can finalize what we want in May and then send it over to legal to tear it apart and make it so that it's a document that can't be challenged
Okay.
to the degree that maybe the last specs.
You have to understand that for whatever reason, these trash, well, it's money, a lot of money, and that's what brings out the disputes over these trash hauling contracts. So we'll make it as best as possible, but believe me, there can always be a dispute.
I mean, just so full council's aware, we're looking at a lot of different options to bid, a lot of different ways to bid. I think we're putting together a very good bid spec. We've talked to a couple different haulers. I've met with a couple of different haulers just to kind of get ideas as to how can we make this competitive for a wider bid rather than, I mean, legitimately, we had 2 legitimate bidders last time. And nobody even got, like, I mean, the bids were so disparagingly different that, you know, we want to make sure that we put something out there that's competitive, that they can all bid on, or at least most of them can bid on. And when you have very large commercial haulers not being able to bid on something, that tells you that maybe those bid specs weren't written as well as they should have been. So I think that we're working really hard. I mean, we've looked at a lot of towns, a lot of ways they've put bids together. We're looking at a lot of big contracts, a lot of language. I mean, this thing is up to 60 pages, and that's without the lawyer looking at it.
Yeah, we put a lot of the requirements for the hauler also. We changed
Yeah.
a lot of those specs.
Yeah.
Could you get me there as soon as possible? Even-
Yeah, I have a little bit more language to kind of firm up. The last meeting I had with a hauler, you know, I said, hey, I was like, we're looking at bidding something out that looks like this. Can you tell us what your thoughts are on this? And they threw some suggestions at me that we may want to examine as well. So, bottom line is I really think that we're going to throw out a bid spec that is more comprehensive, but also offers us the opportunity to look at some additional services in a couple different ways. You know, like we've always talked about the household hazardous waste items, and You know, the county has an event every so often when they can get some grant money, but really that has been something that has haunted us for a long time. People call all the time, what can I do with my oil? What can I do with pesticides? What can I do with paint that can't just have kitty litter dry it up? What can I do with these things? We bid this out before, but we've only bid it out one way, and it was so expensive it wasn't worth doing. But so we're looking at, you know, instead of having like a quarterly thing or a monthly thing, what about a once a year event or once every other year event or something like that?
Twice a year.
Yeah. So we're looking at a bunch of different ways to bid this out to try to make it so that it can be affordable but competitive. But it's going to be as complicated or more than the last one. So we thought we were going to try to simplify it.
We did.
I think it's gotten worse.
Shane, is
It's
it
okay.
possible that with bidding out electronic recycling, the chemical, the household waste recycling, and the other various things that we're doing, is it possible we could actually have 2 or 3 different contractors doing different items?
So that's not how we bid it. I mean, so the committee can re-examine that, but the way that we did it was lowest bidder gets it all.
Because I'm thinking, you know, suppose one company can do the hazardous waste for a lot cheaper.
Listen, it's just a language change that,
Okay.
that somebody could.
I
bring.
just think maybe
Yeah,
that gives us more options.
But here's the problem that I think we're facing. First of all, quite honestly, nobody right now, the market is tanked for recycling. Nobody is really interested in just doing our recycling. It just.
Yeah, it's not
I
what it
mean,
is.
that's what I've heard from 3 different haulers is the recycling piece of this. The market is tanked.
Just no money.
We've stopped collecting anything more than 1 and 2. You know, we're getting more than that from Mascaro only because they have their own plant. But most of these guys don't have their own plant, so they have to actually sell it to another facility, a distributor, who is paying them pennies on the dollar. So they're charging more for the recycling piece. The household hazardous waste, quite honestly, is new to some of them. So that may be that's something that maybe we look at a separate bid item.
Okay.
Because it's just an event. You know, one of the haulers I talked to said we really don't know how to bid on it because is it does everything have to be in a container, like individual containers, and then thrown in 50-gallon drums, and then it's like $500 a drum? I mean, that's how one place is handling it. We may be able to get some actual facilities where the place gets dumped to bid if we separate that out.
Right.
One of the haulers suggested that we do a bid based on just collection, what's it cost to collect, and then we do a separate bid on the actual disposal, so that company A gets the bid to collect, but we can dictate to them that you're going to go to this dump because this dump charges so much less per ton. So there's other ways to look at it, and the committee's kind of examined that, and we've really said the complexity of some of that. Are we able to really how hard is that going to be for us to administer and deal with? Is the other half of that. But we are looking at as much as we can, but we're also looking at what's feasible for us to be able to administer. But yeah, if the committee wants to re-examine how we bid those, feel free. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not sure if maybe what we do is we say if we can bid it out that lowest bidder gets each one. We have the right to do lowest bidder gets each piece separately.
I think I was thinking more in the line of just the electronic recycling and the household waste.
Well, so-
if those could be the
So again-
lowest bidder.
Yeah, so again, like with a hauler, the issue with the electronic is not one of these haulers has a market. They all take it to pretty much the same place
Okay.
for the electronic. I can tell you that there's one person, one facility marketing electronic recycling right now in the entire Lehigh Valley. I mean, every town you go to, every hauler that they have, they're all saying, send it down there.
Where do you think we took our stuff for Earth Day?
Right, same place.
Same place.
So I'm not sure that for
Okay.
the e-waste, unless we take a bid where they're manning the container.
Okay.
That's where the price could change if we're paying for them to actually put the labor at the container instead of our own. But I think otherwise it should be probably pretty close.
Okay.
I would imagine. But again, we should take a look at it. We'll take
Yeah,
a
we have
look
a lot of
at
options.
more, right?
So But, yeah, we tightened it up. We put a lot of information into the
We've looked
contracts.
at, we've looked at a lot of
Looked
different.
at spring cleaning days and things
Yeah,
like
like
that.
a dumpster day, we're gonna put a bid out there for like a once a year dumpster day where, we would have dumpsters at a location where people can bring in their items. So we're looking at a bunch of different items that again, are options. We can take it or we can leave it.
Right.
But at least it's free to get a price on it.
Okay.
And so our next meeting will be scheduled for May 31st at 4:30. Progress.
Thank you, Chairman Schubsta. Parks and Recreation Committee, Chairwoman Baumgartner.
We have one item requiring official action, and this is resolution number 2018-20 for a grant. So this is similar to the grant that we've already applied for, but that grant required that we pay 50% if we're given the grant. This only requires a 25% match, and so it would save us money ultimately, and there's no fee or no cost to the borough to submit or write the grant, because we're getting.
Well, there's a $100 submission fee, but,
Okay. But for writing.
once
it's
again, Barry Eisen and Associates has offered a free service to us to help write the grant. Most of the content's the same, but it's through DCED for this one rather than through their Trails and Greenways grant program, as opposed to the DCNR grant that we just applied for, so.
Councilman Barrett.
What if we get both?
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
I mean, it's a great problem.
We'll cross that bridge, we'll cross that
Well,
bridge
if we
when we
get,
get there.
if we get them both,
we
which
get them?
which one is first?
Well, it
Meaning which one would be
DCNR
granted
didn't
first?
make any of their awards until December of last year.
So we don't know dates yet.
I would think DCD may go faster as far as the process. If we get both, we're taking the DCD grant.
Okay.
We will write the study in such a way that it complies with future DCNR project
Okay.
grant. Because that's one thing that we're gonna have to do if we do get the DCD part, we have to write it to meet DCNR requirements. But most people that apply for one are applying for the other,
Okay.
just because.
Shannon, did you place that in the form of a motion yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
So, and just to ask the question, so I know that the last time we went through this, we didn't follow through with the DCNR grant, correct?
So read your resolution. It actually binds you that you are going to commit to this, because that's the one thing that we had a very long discussion about with the DCNR
Yeah, no,
piece.
for the DCED, that part I get.
Yeah.
But for the DCNR, so that would be 2 times in a row that we have, if,
DCNR would be okay with it because we would tell them, we would withdraw and say,
as soon as we get this.
yeah, look, we
Okay.
got funding from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, just another department. They'd be okay with that. What they wouldn't be okay with is us saying,
Awarding
hey,
it.
we decided
Not to
we don't
take
have
it.
the money to match.
Okay, and we did drop it the last time, or did we actually?
No, we were awarded and dropped it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't repeat that again, correct?
Correct.
So we
well,
got
that's up to you.
Well, no, we're not going to repeat that
Let's
again,
make that
but
clear. That's up to you.
Yes.
But my opinion would be no.
procedurally, we have the option to make that so that does not happen.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Just one quick, Shane, if I am correct, the funds for this would still come in the 2019 budget?
Yeah.
Correct, thank you.
You like to place that in a form of a motion now?
I do. I make a motion to vote on resolution number 2018-20 for the park study grant.
Is there a second? Councilman Anders. Questions or discussion? I think we had it all already. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 7 ayes.
Committee meeting notes are attached if anyone has questions. Our next meeting is June 5th at 4:30. We will be canceling July 3rd meeting, and yeah.
I do believe, I see in there that I had inquired about the poll passes, and I thought I read online that there were times and dates set up, Shane?
Yes.
Correct? Yes, thank you for the follow-up.
So I just wanted to mention, next meeting's June 5th. We are canceling the July 3rd meeting, and I report progress otherwise.
Thank you, Chairwoman Baumgartner. Public Safety Committee Chairman Dufresne.
We already took care of ordinance 1175. Nothing to report here other than progress. Our next meeting is May 9th at 9:15 a.m. I assume Brent and Wes will both be there because I will not, so. Progress.
I'll be there.
I'm not sure that Brent, that's public safety. I think it's Shanna.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's not me.
Shanna and Wes
Yeah.
I'll be there.
will be there.
Yeah, I will not be there now that you
I mean,
mentioned
if you
that.
want to show up, Brent.
See, we
Come
almost
for the
have
fun.
Throw an extra one in there for me.
progress.
Progress. Thank you, Chairman Dufresne. We got General Administration Committee, that's myself. We have 2 items to take action on. The Engelman Agreement is the abandonment of the Second Street Reservoir. This is an agreement that we've been trying to get done for many months so we can abandon the Second Street Reservoir. We will now be able to dig their well and go through with the abandonment process. This has been very costly. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve the agreement?
I'll make a motion.
Councilman Dufresne, seconded by Councilwoman Baumgardner. Questions?
Yes, so you're saying this is costly. I know we budgeted for the closure of the reservoir. Where do we stand?
Well, so
seeing
you budgeted last year,
that? Correct.
and we incurred legal and engineering fees that took, it didn't take up most of your budget, but we spent an entire year going through this process of trying to get an agreement in place, trying to make sure that we had rights to get in there. It got complicated by somebody actually purchasing a piece of property that we thought we owned and didn't own. So there were a lot of things that drug out costs that we certainly did not expect to occur. Which brings us into this year. Again, we've incurred engineering and legal fees to try to get to the point where we're finally at, which we thought would be a little bit easier. I'm just happy to say we are here. Yes. We have a reservoir that serves literally one house that's not even in the borough of Emmaus, and we spent, I think, $8,000 to repair it a year and a half ago. We don't know what it's going to cost until we bid it out, and quite honestly, at that point, we may say, you know what, it may take longer, but our Public Works Department will do the filling in.
Or it might be not till next year.
Or it may not be till next year, but at least we'll get the well dug for the Engelmans.
Okay.
And we'll start the abandonment process of draining the well or draining the reservoir. We've already done the line improvement work down below that we needed to do, which again was costs that we didn't originally anticipate. We can at least get it so that thing is a dry well, like it's a dry reservoir. There's no water in there, we don't have to service it, we shut it off, and then we'll go from there. So if it takes longer, at least we got done what we needed to get done. And we have the rights to get in there and collapse
And
it.
then eventually
Yeah.
take care of it.
That becomes their property then, correct? Or is it currently their
Well, so-
It
property?
is their property,
It
they
is.
just have a right now to us to
Okay.
supply them water.
So it was always theirs and we just basically,
Yeah.
like a lease almost?
Well, so we build LCA for their water usage because so that way it wasn't governed by the PUC.
Okay.
I mean, it was odd because this property we thought we owned. Everybody thought we owned it. And there are council minutes and all sorts of agreements and all sorts of crazy things from way back in the 1950s or 60s where it was all intentions that the borough would own that piece of property, but it never got recorded on a deed. So when our solicitors did the deed work, that complicated things even further. On top of that, somebody decided they were buying that big piece of property that included the reservoir, right in the middle of us doing all of our work. So it got muddier than what we really thought. Like we just thought this was going to be a clean break. Like we're abandoning this thing, we're going to give them a well, we're going to collapse it in, we're going to call it a day. We still own it, but we'll figure out a way to get rid of it. That's not how this went down. It was much more complicated than anybody knew. The people that bought the property are very eager for us to get a reservoir off of the property. So it's not even like we're selling the property because we don't own it.
Can I ask, does council have the revised version that came in this morning?
They don't. I mean, we haven't decided, but maybe you should explain.
This morning, of all times, of course, the representative for the owner of the property requested that they change the agreement to include a provision that we, if necessary, install a filtration system, basically for metals. I talked to Shane about it. He had no concern, because this is a ongoing thing. We've got to get rid of it. And the engineer concurred. He thought that it would be a good idea to do what's necessary.
So the filtration is for the draining process, I'm assuming?
No.
No.
So this
No,
is
for the
when we
drink-
drink,
the
when we
well
drink the
hookup.
well, when we drill the well and do the
Oh,
water.
for the
For that
well,
one
for the
household.
well. Okay.
Yeah, if it tests high in iron,
Yeah, okay.
essentially it's for iron.
So 9F and G have some changes, but that's it. And all it basically is that when we're done with it, and we cut them, we set up their well, and we set up their filtration system if needed, then we're done with them. They're gone.
There's no maintenance, there's no, like, it's over after.
Doesn't G already say that? Doesn't G already say that? We do have,
No, there's just, it was like a one sentence language change that was made this morning based on that.
You know, in fact, I actually almost read it verbatim. It says, it's number 9F, grantors acknowledge and agree that upon completion of the well project, including the installation, of course, the way they wrote it, they messed it up, but we'll clean it up. Installation of a filtration system is set forth in subparagraph G. These were changes that they made, but we'll clean that double installation out before you sign it.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any more discussion?
you don't have to amend that to include that. Okay.
I would just say, yeah, they probably should amend with that change.
We-
Just to have
Yeah.
a public.
All right, who made the motion?
I'll amend my motion
Amend your motion
to
to,
include the filtration
Okay.
system
in
language.
the second?
I'll
Yes.
amend- yeah. Oh, did I second?
Was it mine?
It was Shannon, it was
I'll
Shannon
ask the
Baumgartner.
question.
All right.
I'll amend my second.
All right, all those in
Sure.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There are 7 ayes.
Wait, no, I didn't vote.
Oh,
I'm
one
abstaining for this.
abstaining?
Yes.
So we have 6 ayes, 1 abstention, Councilman Barrett.
Do you want to amend your question? Is that what you were?
Yes, that's what it was.
Amend your question. All right, and we have one more item under general administration, the LCA/Allentown letter for EPA AO. I'll read under the action what was written for us. Attorney Dimick will be weighing in on this. However, a letter like this is needed to be able to finally get out of the EPA administrative order and get them to turn it back over to DEP, which gives us a little breathing room to be able to keep doing our I&I work. We are asking for a twofold vote. In the motion, we are asking for you to approve the borough manager to execute this letter. So that will be the first motion. Or do you want to combine?
You could probably combine it.
And also in the motion, we are asking that you authorize the borough manager, engineer, and solicitor to finalize our submission and future I&I and O&M plan to EPA. The submission is due at the beginning of July, and we have a bunch of work to do to get it done. So would somebody like to make those two motions? The first one allowing the borough manager to execute the letter, and the second one to put the plan together for the EPA.
Make the motion.
Motion by Councilman Dufresne, seconded by Councilman Shipstead. Questions or discussion? Councilman Dufresne.
Just so this ties in, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, to the article that was in the local paper 2 or 3 weeks ago with the DEP.
I don't read the papers, so.
I do, so
What's that?
it does.
It goes in hand with that, okay.
Yeah,
I understand.
the real key, I added some language to it. They might yipe a little bit, but I added it to make sure that it did not affect anything with our existing sewage agreements. Those things are protected as much as I can without writing. Remember, this is a cover letter that's going on there. I just didn't want somebody to come back later and say, hey, look what you did, you gave up your rights.
The bigger piece of the whole thing, so this is the easy part. The bigger piece of the whole thing is the second motion we're asking you to let us do, and that's putting the plan together. That's going to be the plan that we're basically gonna be moving forward with and saying to EPA and DEP, here's our plan on paper of what we're doing.
It's all the corrections that we're gonna do.
And from what I read in the paper, as long as we're, put that plan in place and we're moving towards that plan from a penalty side or whatever you wanna call it, we're okay then.
Yeah,
What's going to happen, there's already an administrative order for us to do, to address this, but they've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and now it came to a head, and it's come to a head at a very favorable regulatory time, and now a deal's been worked out where it will go from EPA back to DEP, and the real remedy for the problem is I&I, instead of the hundreds, if not millions, of upgrade costs and the big legal, all the legal fights attendant thereto for the Klein's Island plant. So hopefully we'll never have to get to that second point.
so EPA's goal is to lift the administrative order. Like, they will be completely out of the game. But what they're saying is, for us not to be back in, you need to put the plan together. And the plan needs to consist of 4 or 5 different parts, and you have to keep playing ball the way that you were. And we know that. I mean, we know, we can look at just the last 2-inch rainstorm that we had. Meter 3 went up, I think 3 times higher than what its normal rate is. So we know that we have work to do yet.
Well, I mean, this plan also is not just in cooperation, it's also it's a benefit to our residents as it reduces our costs in the long run. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a double win.
Yes.
It's a shame.
If you reduce your flow, you reduce your costs.
Yeah.
Just know though, that flow has to go somewhere. So while we lower the cost on the sewer, be prepared to increase your expenses
For capital.
Drainage,
on drainage.
because that water's gotta go somewhere.
So
Yes, yeah, I mean, there's,
well,
I don't
which
think
is-
it's as substantial
well,
though.
which is the next EPA administrative order that you have in
Yeah.
front of you, and that's the
Stormwater.
MS4 stormwater
Right.
plan. So just know, like, once we separate it out of sewers, that water has to go somewhere. And quite honestly, there are parts of this town where our stormwater lines are not big enough to handle the amount of water that's already going in them, let alone when we start actually fixing our manholes and.
So
and-
that means more engineer studies, more upgrades, more
It's going to
whatever.
be a
Cleaning out
long-term
of-
cyclical process that we're going to be going through. Absolutely,
But again, for just this one, net, this is a win.
Yes.
absolutely. This is a huge win.
This really saves a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, are we gonna use the surcharge on our bills towards these projects?
We have to.
That's what we're doing.
Well, we've been doing.
Because originally that was gonna go for the project in Allentown, but now we're using it for
But and,
corrections.
And we stated that though. When
Yeah, we stated that if
Yep.
if it now what they've made clear though is if this comes back into play, and at some point, their feeling is at some point it's going to come back into play. Those that initial $25 million upgrade in Allentown, and then the $150 million additional upgrade in Allentown could be back on the table. I'm hoping that it's somewhere like 30 years from now. But we
After you're retired.
that's why I said somewhere 30 years from now. But we don't have that answer. We can't say if or when, but the feeling is not if, the feeling is when. So all we can do is our part, and make sure that we're continuously doing our part.
The real key for us is to keep our flows below our contractual limits, both peak and average daily on a 30-day. If we do that, we are in as good of legal position as you can be.
So with you saying that, not to get political here, in the next 2 to 3 years, it might be in our best interest to get us there if the potential is coming back while the regulatory times are a little bit easier.
I don't believe LCA will be able to do it, get theirs back. I don't believe some of the other communities will be able to. I think you can, because we have really good numbers that we paid for. And our engineer thinks our peak flow is substantially higher than the minimum peak flow that's in our contract. So I think we can do it.
We have a lot of work to do. I mean, there's a lot of capital expenses going to occur here.
That's what I was gonna say. Our budgeting in the next few years has
Well,
to be
I mean,
directed.
so we did the surcharge based on the millions of dollars that they were telling us we were gonna have to pay. We're just going to spend that money on the capital improvements rather than giving to them to pay on a loan. I mean, that's really what's gonna happen here. But you gotta remember, the way that ordinance is written is, you can't use that to balance a budget. That money is specific to taking care of the I&I
Capital improvement.
works.
Sewer.
So, I mean, one of the things that we're gonna be looking at next year is a sewer flushing and vacuum truck. That camera that we purchased is one of the greatest assets you can possibly have ever bought. We have a guy doing it almost full time, doing sewer main inspections. So we're gonna be able to stretch our I&I dollars based on those inspections.
And based on what we're seeing, are we getting the results that we expected, where the majority of lines are in question, or are we finding that it's more more positive, that there are less lines that are affected? I mean, as far as tree roots, are we finding that almost everyone has them in there, or are we finding that it's less than we thought?
So we're not hitting the laterals yet. That's
Okay.
a whole nother.
You're just on the mains.
We're just on the mains right now. We're switching gears and going into the north end of town, because that's where we're seeing the peak flows really elevating. So we're switching gears, and now that we have a better understanding of how the thing works, we're really starting to hit the north end of town to start putting a project together for next year's I&I. But it's this end of town, out towards the northwestern part of town, that seems to be the highest inflow area right now. Anything that flows into those 2 meters, I should say. Not necessarily that it's the north end of town that's the problem. But it seems like we have most of the eastern part of town resolved. But we're talking a lot of work that needs to be done.
Any other discussion or questions? Good questions. It's very good explanation, good update. It's good that everybody understands where we are on this, because this is a major part of our budget, major part of future possible litigation and all that stuff. So it's good discussion that we had, and everybody knows where we're at. So
This has been a major burden on you guys as a council, and on our staff, and on legal counsel for 7 years. I mean, it started before I started here. From having to go into houses and do inspections to the legal battles that we've been going through. So it's nice to kind of at least be at a point with the administrative order part to be able to breathe a little bit.
So it's been a long discussion. We had a motion and a second, correct?
Yeah, by Mr. Dufresne and then Mr. Schubst.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There are 7 ayes.
And then approval for the plan piece.
Well, we combined them.
I thought you combined them, but.
We
No,
combined them.
you asked for just one. You actually said we're going to do 2 motions. The first one was for the.
No, I asked you and you said to combine it, and I did.
No, I told you that, but when you made the motion, that's not how it was.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion to execute
the
the plan
motion.
for the EPA?
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Schubst seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There's 7
I
ayes.
can promise you.
It's official now.
We'll look at the video.
I'm gonna watch the tape.
I can promise you.
Be careful.
Gonna watch the replay. I don't know. You're on my side, right?
Yeah, well, he only hears what he wants to.
We will be meeting here in council chambers at 9 a.m. on this Thursday. I report progress. Budget and Finance Committee Chairman Barrett.
Yes, we have 2 items for official action. The first is our bill list, Resolution 2018-21. I'll place that in the form of a motion.
Motion by Councilman Barrett, second by Councilman Dufresne. Questions on the bill list? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There are 7 ayes.
And the second item is one that I think everyone was in the room when we started to discuss it. It took place 2 council meetings ago where it came up. So I'll kind of bring it back if you weren't part of that discussion during the Budget and Finance. But it's a resolution amending the schedule of fees for the portable storage containers, the pods, that type of thing. It was a 2-1 vote in favor of, as it's written right here. Mr. Levenberg had a concern about the second, during the extension, the portable storage container 30-day extension, which was an additional $25. Currently for the trash containers, which I think this is most similar to, and this is where the question, why we're having this discussion, because we didn't have something that specifically defined storage containers, just storage dumpsters, is a total of $75, am I correct?
For up to 20 cubic yards and then $100 for over 20.
Right, so this is a lesser amount. I had, if you remember, proposed the idea of trying to shorten the time frame, because I think that they're unsightly, and I think that storage is different than trash. Trash, if you have one of those, it's almost certain that you are tearing apart something and trying to make your place look better, which increases the value. If you have a storage container, it is most likely that you are moving. That's the most common use for those, and occasionally they get used just as a temporary storage space. But let's decrease the chance for temporary storage is how I see it. So
Motion?
I'll place that in the form of a motion.
Motion
Yes,
by
Rick?
Councilman Barrett, second. Councilman Anders? Just to say what I was saying, I'm not against the 30-day extension. I'm just against charging another fee for it. So there's a $50 fee, and if they want an extension, I think they should just have to come in and get an extension. They shouldn't have to pay another $25. They're already paying for their storage container. Realistically, how many are going to be longer than 30 days? I don't know. But I know Councilman Barrett says he sees the containers all over town. I don't see them, at least on my end of town. So for me, it's not an issue. For him, apparently it is. And I don't think we should be charging it an extra $25. So I'll just leave it at that. So I'll be voting no. Anybody else comments? All those in favor? Just kind of give me a wave too. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. So it's 6-1. You know who the one is, right? Chairman?
Yes, our next meeting, which was originally scheduled for May 10th, is canceled. Progress.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett. Community Relations Planning and Development Committee, Chairwoman McManaman.
Thank you. Ordinance number 1176 has already been taken care of. So we do have to talk about the intermunicipal agreement. As we all know, there's been a lot of debate as to the positives and negatives of entering into this agreement. The Planning Commission voted to recommend that Borough Council deny the execution of this agreement. So at CRD, we also discussed in depth and believe that the negatives in signing the agreement far outweigh the positives. We don't feel such an agreement benefits Emmaus Borough. We already approved the comprehensive plan and do work with our neighboring communities on many levels. Without a solicitor, engineer, and other experts and professional support, and people being appointed to this without any cause, a committee of this nature will only add a bureaucratic layer without any significance. So it is the CRD's opinion that we should not sign this agreement.
So there's no motion to recommend?
We would like you guys to vote formally on the matter, so.
Okay, do you want to make a motion to not recommend the agreement?
I would like to make a motion to not recommend.
There's a motion by Councilwoman
The
McManaman,
intermunicipal-
seconded by Councilman Schubsta. Questions or comments?
So
Councilman Anders?
my first question is there anything legal that this group can try to impose upon the borough
If you enter it or don't enter it?
if we do not enter?
Let me start by saying that we have approved the comprehensive
Correct.
plan. And under the MPC, you're supposed to then enter into the intermunicipal agreement. Could they bring something? Yes, they could. Could they force you to accept this particular document? No, but some derivation of it is possible that based on our previous action with the comprehensive plan adoption, they could. Let's go back. As you know, by doing this joint comprehensive plan, we get to take credit for, like, if you have dirty bookstores or something like that. If some community already has that, you don't have to have that use in your community. If there's a marijuana stores, and they don't have any, and you have that use, they don't have to worry about it. The general law is each municipality must provide for all legal uses within their community in some spot. in some zone. But what you're doing by going with a joint plan is you're now encompassing and using all the others that are with you, and their areas count as your areas. So you don't get caught by them saying, well, you don't have enough R3, you don't have enough, usually that's where it comes in. It's multifamily housing there. That's almost every time, that's where it is. There's all sorts of technical stuff, de jure and de facto and all that, but the bottom line is, having that plan is very beneficial. Can I guarantee that they will not pursue this because we've agreed with that? No. The truth is, we benefit the least from the plan because we already have most of the uses.
But with that said, Attorney Dimick, it's not about the plan for this council, for the members that have expressed concerns, for the planning commission. It's never been about the plan.
Right.
It's about entering an agreement that forces a committee of other municipalities to meet because they disagree, because there might be a potential that a development that you have the explicit authority to approve or deny under your jurisdiction as your own municipality, that this committee can sit in there, weigh in on it, has all sorts of let's call it veto power, even though we claim that there's no legal jurisdiction, but your thing talks about mediation in it. So the real concern isn't anything but the way that the agreement's written, and it forces every municipality to be subject to what could be a political football. That's really the concern that everybody in this room has expressed, everybody at Planning Commission has expressed. It's not like the concerns that I've heard, the concerns that I've shared, the concerns that members of these commissions and committees have shared, has been nothing more than that piece of it. I don't see how they could take legal action and win if you don't want to sign an agreement based on that piece. I think that if that piece was written differently, from what I've talked to council members in this room, if that piece was written differently, and that it can ensure that professionals were involved in the committee, and that it wasn't just people that are elected to office and playing a political game, I don't think they'd have a problem at all signing the agreement. The problem is when elected people are weighing in on a development that they have no real insight or no real professional knowledge about. How does an elected person from Emmaus have any insight or any real professional knowledge on what is going on in Albertus Borough? That is really the concern that has been shared among these members of the agreement, and nothing more. I don't think you guys had a problem with anything more than that specific piece of it. And for that reason, and the way that that's written, and we have expressed our concerns when they were writing it, because Attorney Dinkellocker specifically expressed those concerns, and we specifically sent those concerns on to the people that were drafting it. Why we should enter into that is the real question that everybody in this room has asked.
And in addition to that, Shane, the reason in addition to everything you just said, I just think developers have so many hoops and hurdles to go through to begin with, so many regulations, so many different committees and planning commissions and the Lehigh County Planning. They have enough to go through now that they don't need to go through another layer. And I think it's ridiculous that they have to go through another layer. I just don't think that you should have to do that. We have enough layers already.
So, I think that there's a general consensus here. I think I know where the vote is going. One thing I will comment on, and I kind of see it differently than you, is, the municipalities are very different. If you can compare us from the difference from Emmaus to Lower Macungie, we're significantly different. And at the end of the day, there's some other stuff in here, but this is really the goal of one, probably two municipalities to control development. And the development in our municipality is significantly different. We're a high-density area, and that is the goal of a town. It should be built out. Building a neighborhood in the middle of a field is not a positive thing. I actually just attended the Lower Macungie commissioners meeting, which took place when they had $5 million to buy land. It's a nice treat. But it was a packed audience and a round of applause. People do want to see the land preserved, but they want to see it preserved in large cornfields. And so if Lower Macungie's jurisdiction is coming into ours, where we are really the opposite, where we actually want to see some development take place. We don't have much. We're almost completely built out, but it is not a negative to have us do this. So if we have a community that is saying, we don't want any development, and then all of a sudden they're interfering in what we can do, I think that's a negative, and that is really the only piece. The other stuff, I think it's great that these communities are actually talking together and working together, having conversation, planning things out. I think that, if you take the whole picture, is a very good thing. It is, like you said, just that one little line where you can't make all of these municipalities the same, and if someone has an agenda that they want to run with, they can interfere with 7 elected officials of what the people of this town want to see, and that is a strange scenario to
Well,
me.
look at the fields at Indian Creek. Without this agreement, look at how Lower Macungie, who doesn't have a one house being built on it, in that development, changed what we had to do in our borough. They changed how many homes we could put in the borough. They changed what we wanted to do. I don't think they should be able to do that. We approved it, and then they went and said, no, we're not going to approve it. And they don't even have one house in that development. That's an example of it. And I'm totally against that.
So again, just so I understand, if we were to sign this, the way it's written, that committee would have the final say over this
That-
here, or
that's-
we could still override it.
That's, yes. Here's
After
how
legal battle.
here's how I read it. Each community, as part of this, appoints a person to the steering committee. So each community, Albertus and the Upper Milford and Lower Mac.
And Macungie.
Macungie.
And
Lower map. Lower map.
And they all appoint a person. Now, the only 2 times does it come in. It comes in if you're doing, well, a high-impact development of some form that could affect some other community, or if you're up against their, I think it's within 50 foot or something like that of their municipal boundary lines. Those are the 2 circumstances. But unfortunately, that high-impact development type thing isn't really defined. So that concerns me quite a bit. I talked to Shane today. That part
It could be the
does.
convenience store that's proposed to be built right down the road here, because traffic could essentially spill into the next neighborhood or the next town. So now you're going to go through all of your processes that we spend a lot of hours, a lot of time, and a lot of money on, and deal with, the folks in our community that are either opposed or for it, and go through all of that approval process. And then, oh, by the way, yeah, you approved it, but we're forming our steering committee because we've got a problem with it.
And then the steering committee, it says they're trying to work it out amongst the people, with the municipality that's involved. If that doesn't work, there's mediation, and if that doesn't work, the way I read it, we can do whatever we want anyway. But it does add a layer, and it does add time.
A lot of time.
Well, and furthermore, in the planning process, if a plan isn't approved in such and such a time, what happens?
Well, we've got the basic 90-day rule.
So, it puts you at risk for violating the MPC in that regard, doesn't it?
It does.
If it drags out.
Conceivably.
Councilman Beck.
So what is the current status? Are we the last municipality that has not agreed?
And that's part of the issue
Right.
here is.
So we're the last ones, and I know that we have submitted the requests that you said, that those were the 2 main things, and what specific feedback, if any, did we get when we made those
Well,
requests?
so every municipality had feedback on this agreement, and they've the original agreement was much more
Yeah.
involved and much more stringent, and they've watered it down to try to get it to everybody that they could, and really, this is the as watered down of an agreement as they could really come up with.
So they see that the planning commission gave us a 5-0 against it, correct, here? It clearly sounds like it's going to be a 7-0 against it. Would we be better off to take this back to them one more time and say, it's those 2 main things, right? I mean, is there anything else that is?
Every piece of feedback I've gotten is really, that's the focus. Is it worthwhile? I think what you're getting at is to say, hey guys, we have a real problem with this committee piece.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that this committee piece is a sticking point for several municipalities that want it. McCungy Borough, who has been getting trampled on for years and years
By Lower Country.
by another municipality, they're begging for that. They want to be able to say, hey, we want to have something to say and force a meeting for the 1 million square foot warehouse that's going to be put in right down the road, and they have to go down 100, they have to go down our main street. There's a reason why they want this, and there's a real need for them. And I think some of the others, there's probably a real need and a real want. And again, we talk about purpose and reasoning behind everything and why it's good for them and maybe not us. But we are, at the end of the day, the only municipality that has not signed this thing.
Yeah.
So let me ask, is it worthwhile for what Wes just said, that if we tabled it and we sent back to them the options and this is what we feel, again, needs to be rewritten before we would approve it?
Well, so let me ask you this. If you sign this thing, and now 5 out of the 6 or 6 out of the 7 have signed it, and one of them comes back and says, I don't like what you did, could all 6 of you reconsider? What do you think? What would you say as the municipality after you've worked on putting this thing together and you've worked with each other and you're ready to go based on what it is? We can try it, but I can tell you that I know what the initial reaction is going to be.
Yeah.
I don't need to have a crystal ball for that.
I don't really want to send it back anyhow, because how much more can they water it down? I mean, it's either they have a say in somebody else's municipality or they don't. And I don't want them to have another say in somebody else's municipality.
Yeah, I guess I see all of this in the spirit of cooperation, because I think that when you look at all the things that go on, I mean, when these communities, we do all impact each other in some way, some more than others, there is a benefit to have that. And even though this agreement is very specific, there are other things that kind of trickle out of that. And if you go back, I mean, it's probably 10 years ago, and I'll specifically say Lower Macungie, before they changed from a second-class township to a first, I mean, it was run significantly differently. It was always the spot where it was the wall there. I mean, where you could never get any conversations going. That's completely different now. I mean, we cooperate very well with them, Upper Milford, Macungie, I mean, in all kinds of different agreements. So I don't want that. I don't want us to be the now that municipality that is saying, well, we're no longer interested in doing these other things, and this is where they're going to hold it and say, oh yeah, you guys are now the ones that don't cooperate. That's my biggest concern is that
I agree with you. Our staff, we work very well with our neighbors.
Yeah.
I mean, we do
I
paving
agree,
projects together.
and I love that we're there.
Construction projects together, all of the neighbors. We work very well with them. And yeah, I mean, is that a concern of mine? Absolutely it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, because that did not exist. I mean, 10 years ago, for sure, it did not exist. Those conversations just weren't happening, or they were happening on such a small scale that it didn't make things more efficient. Right now, I mean, the communities share a lot of things, a lot of just general conversations that are going on. I mean, there's better communication among everyone, and that, I think, improves the quality of life for everyone in the area.
So if we were to not do this, that whole deal wouldn't fall apart. The other municipalities would still be agreed with each other, right?
Yes.
So there's still safety in numbers for Albertus, Macungie, Upper Milford, Lower Milford, that's 4. There's still safety in numbers there.
I think the real legal issue is, are we protected at all under the zoning penumbra, if you will, that covers all uses? I don't think we would be without this agreement. But I'm not worried anyway, because I think we meet the necessary state requirements for our zoning.
So from a